and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Now, US President Joe Biden will sit down for talks with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky in Normandy as the two leaders arrive in France for D-Day landing's anniversary. Visiting the Lebanon border, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel's army is prepared for strong action as tensions intensify in the country's north. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to be sworn in for a historic third term on the 8th of June, as key allies pledge continued support to the BJP after the election verdict yesterday. The International Committee of the Red Cross halts food deliveries to thousands of displaced people in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo amid intensifying conflict in the region. And Italy fines global tech giant Meta $3.8 million for lack of transparency in its use of data and management of Instagram and Facebook accounts. Hello and welcome. We begin with South Africa, where time is running out for the African National Congress to shore up partners to form the next government. The ANC lost its majority for the first time in 30 years in the May 29th general election. However, it still remains the largest party, with 159 seats in the 400-seat National Assembly. The ANC is way short of majority to form government. Now, this risks Cyril Ramaphosa's presidential bid, leaving his future hanging in the balance. On Tuesday, the ANC top brass sat down to discuss coalitions and possible partners. A 27-member ANC working committee weighed alternatives. However, the options that it stares at are diametrically opposite to what the ANC stands for. Now, according to a report in South African outlet The Daily Maverick, the ANC is considering three forms of power-sharing alliance. The first and the most preferred option is to form a minority government. For this, the ANC will look at a confidence and supply agreement with the DA and IFP. Under this, the ANC would hold executive power and the DA would have the upper hand in Parliament, holding the Speaker's seat and powerful committee positions, while the IFP too will have some positions in Parliament. In return, the DA and IFP will support the ANC government on key votes, including budget and policy concessions. The second best option is a coalition government between the ANC, the DA and the IFP. The challenge for the ANC here is that this could risk party supporters and pose challenges in policy alignment, and it is expected to serve more like a marriage of convenience. The Democratic Alliance, or DA, presents itself as a champion of business and free market economics, but it has often been accused of representing the interests of the privileged white minority. The DA also favors scrapping some of the ANC's flagship black empowerment measures, which it says have not worked. Now, the last and least favorable option is a government of national unity. In this scenario, the ANC would join hands with a much wider array of smaller parties. However, this could create a volatile political situation, which may likely lead to an unstable government or may even result in a collapse. Now, if one or more parties were to withdraw, it could effectively leave the ANC with no option but to form a coalition with Jacob Zuma's MK party and the EFF. South Africa's new parliament must convene by the 16th of June, and one of its first tasks will be to choose the nation's president. Now, as Cyril Ramaphosa is set to face resignation pressure, the ANC must choose its most viable option to keep him in power. Now, to understand this better, we have with us Christopher Van Dam, a Senior Research Fellow on the Africa Program at Chatham House. He joins us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Alyson. Thanks very much for having me on.
Right, now it's great to speak to you. The ANC is currently in talks to secure a coalition partner. No deal is going to be easy considering the options. Who, in your view, is the ANC likely to form a coalition with?
Yeah, look, I mean, you've run through the options that they've got on the table. They need to speak to the Democratic Alliance as the largest party of opposition, and they need to speak to other partners as well. The challenge that they have is that the difference between the number of seats that they currently hold and that majority of getting the kind of 50% plus one that they need in order to be able to elect through a president is either going to require working with the Democratic Alliance, like you say, either through a supply and confidence agreement or a formal coalition. Is either going to then, or you can work with the economic freedom fighters, but the EFF are still going to be 2 seats short of that majority. And then you've got a plethora of smaller parties that you can work with. And, the documents that you have, that you alluded to that kind of outline these options of confidence and supply or a formal agreement or this kind of broad government of national unity, that was the subject of discussion, and it seems like there's not a significant amount of conclusion other than hints that they're going to be talking to everybody and that they've reached out to Mkhonto we Sizwe, but as yet Mkhonto we Sizwe have not picked up the phone and have not been part of those discussions so far. So, and the ANC itself is characteristically a broad church, as they like to call themselves. It's got a lot of different interest groups within that, a lot of different alliance partners, including having governed for the last 30 years in alliance with the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU. And COSATU is saying, no, we don't want to work with the DA or don't want to work with the DA alone. So even within that 27-person body that you talk about, there's very, very different views pulling in different directions. And it seems that there's no real certain or clear answer on this issue just yet.
Right. And what challenges and opportunities does a coalition government or the partnership present to South Africa?
Look, on the upside, South Africa has got a constitution that is designed for pluralism. It's designed to have multiple inputs into a system of government. And for the last 30 years, it has been dominated by one single party. So there's a huge opportunity now for this kind of trade-off on issues and issues-based policy formation so that you get lots of people inputting into that process. Now that is a positive, and it's a positive in that you get multiple voices now being heard. The issues are twofold. One is the uncertainty. For international investors and for domestic investors, it's really not clear yet who's going to be part of any form of alliance, what form that would take. And even when we do have an answer to this within the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a huge amount of uncertainty as to how long that formation would be able to hold together. In recent years, South Africa has had experience of coalitions at a provincial and a metro level. And these metro coalitions have gone through repeated cycles and shown themselves to be very unstable. So that's one of the issues. Another one of the issues is clearly that these parties don't have a huge amount in common when it comes to some of the key policy issues that they're going to have to address. And so there's going to have to be a new framework for how to find that consensus and how to find a way forward in working together. And particularly when it comes to working, the two big parties, the ANC and the DA, getting over some of the historical issues around race and some of those social conversations, it's going to be really, really difficult for them.
Absolutely. You just touched on my next question with regard to South African policies. How might these coalition talks and coalition affect and impact South African policies?
Yeah, ultimately, these parties are coming from very, very different ideological positions, including around the role of the state in the economy. Who should be providing jobs? Should it be the state? Should it be the private sector? Should it be a blend of the two? So in that sense, that we're going to have a real issue around finding a way forward on some of those. Having said that, I think that the DA and the ANC are committed to constitutionalism, and they are committed to fiscal responsibility. So even the ANC doesn't have big spending plans, it has shown that it's been able to govern with a level of fiscal responsibility. And so those issues, I think, having at least a broad agreement at that headline level is going to make it in some way a bit easier to iron out some of the challenges below, and the list of priorities. There's a lot of agreement around what those priorities are. It's job creation, it's reducing crime, and it's improving electricity generating capacity and electricity access. So at least there's an agreement on what the key priorities are, even if there's going to have to be a lot of discussion and debate on the best way of tackling those issues.
Right. Christopher, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and your analysis there.
Thank you very much.
Now, as the race for influence in Africa intensifies, Russian President Vladimir Putin seems to have his game plan set. Putin has once again sent his top diplomat on tour to Africa. Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov made his first stop in Guinea. Now, this was his first visit to the country since 2013. He also reportedly met Guinea's junta leader, Mamadi Doumbia. Now, he has been in power since 2021 after the military takeover. The focus of talks in Guinea remained on military cooperation and increasing Russian investments in the mineral-rich country. The next stop for the Russian foreign minister in his Africa influence tour was Congo. There, Lavrov met the Congolese president to discuss the strengthening of military ties. Russia has been training the Congolese military on how to use, service and repair Russian-made military equipment. Where Lavrov is headed next is not clear as of now, but reports say that he was expected in Chad and then Burkina Faso. So Lavrov is certainly making a stop in the junta-ruled states, where growing discontent with the West, especially France and the US, have contributed to a shift towards Moscow. Now, Russia has been backing the military junta in Africa's coup belt with extensive military support. It plays a key role across the Horn of Africa and the Sahel sections of the coup belt. Private Russian militias have been supporting the juntas to fight armed rebel groups, crush dissent, and fend off threats to power. Russia's deepest footprint has been seen in Mali and Burkina Faso. Now, Russian mercenaries have been identified in more than 10 countries in Africa. Moscow pursues a combination of military, economic, and diplomatic interests in Africa. Militarily, it focuses on weapons trade, Russia is the largest arms supplier to Africa, accounting for nearly half of all the weapons flowing into the continent. Moscow also seeks to expand its operational footprint by signing agreements for new military bases. Now, the economic aspect of it brings us to Africa's vast reserves of critical minerals. Accessing valuable natural resources such as gold, diamonds, uranium, and oil remains a top priority for Russia. Diplomatically, Russia wants to push Putin's vision of a multipolar world order. Based on a weakened Western influence, at the center of Putin's Africa game plan is the geopolitical rivalry between Russia and the West, which has intensified exponentially since the war in Ukraine. Moscow has been tapping into anti-Western sentiment to bolster its influence. Russia also seeks African votes in the support of its position at the UN. It is interesting to note that many African countries abstained from voting or even voted against the UNGA resolution to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In fact, while in Congo, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov slammed the West over its supposed objectives in Ukraine. He said French military instructors in Ukraine would be legitimate targets for Russia. His Congolese counterpart also said the West was provoking Russia.
As for the French instructors, I have reason to believe there are many specific facts on this matter that they are already working in Ukraine. Regardless of whether they are members of the French armed forces or simply mercenaries, they represent an absolutely legitimate target for our armed forces. In our eyes, those who urge to send troops on the ground do not help the peace process, but on the contrary, they put all humanity under the risk of fatal and definitive confrontation. This is not a very responsible position. As we have understood, Russia has been excluded from the conference in Buggenstock in Switzerland. We don't understand if this conference is indeed gathered to find peace.
The West accuses Russia of undermining democratic stability and driving conflict on the continent using its mercenaries and a disinformation campaign. It also accuses Russian militias of human rights abuses. But for the West, it is certainly getting difficult to break Russia's streak of growing influence in Africa. Analysts say this is due to frustration with failures of Western intervention. Now, last month, US President Joe Biden hosted Kenya's President William Ruto at the White House. The US has also been using its diplomatic channels and economic push to court African countries. But will it be enough to puncture Putin's Africa game plan? Our next story is from Uganda, where China is quietly making inroads into the quotidian lives of residents, starting with children. Kids in the East African country are being encouraged to learn Mandarin for better career prospects. Uganda has been teaching Mandarin to school students since at least 2020. While the language has made its way to the school curriculum, Mandarin is also gaining popularity with the Chinese Bridge Language Proficiency Competition. The contest began 23 years ago with the aim to foster exchange among Chinese language learners around the world. Now, earlier this week, Uganda held the competition in the capital city of Kampala. It saw the participation of several students who believed it is imperative for them to learn at least 2 foreign languages in order to secure good job opportunities. Now, China has become increasingly powerful and prominent across Africa over the past 2 decades, and Uganda is not the only country teaching its youngsters Mandarin. In South Africa, Mandarin has been an optional language course for students since 2014. Meanwhile, Kenyan schools also offer Mandarin lessons alongside French, Arabic, and German. Not just this, the establishment of Confucius Institutes is also helping Africa's most important economic partner expand its footprints across the continent. The Confucius Institute at Uganda's Makerere University has trained over 20,000 students from around 80 secondary schools. Meanwhile, more than 145 local Ugandan teachers can now independently teach the language. The institute launched its first outpost in Africa at the University of Nairobi in 2005. Since then, it has expanded to at least 61 centers across the continent. And analysts say the continued expansion of these Chinese cultural institutes is the country's strategy to enhance its soft power over the continent. Interestingly, African students are also increasingly turning to China for overseas education. According to a report between 2011 and 2017, the rate of African students traveling to China for higher studies grew by a whopping 258%, and most of them belong to lower middle-income countries such as Nigeria. Meanwhile, other reports say the boost among African youth to learn Mandarin comes from a rise in Chinese investments in the continent, and this trend will likely see China replace many European countries as the preferred study abroad destination in the coming years. Now, the African governments see the introduction of Mandarin and Chinese institutes as an investment in the future of young Africans. But critics have voiced concerns that it may be used as a tool for spreading Chinese propaganda. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the reports of coups and crises that dominate the headlines from the continent, on this show, we get you the positive stories that often get overlooked. In Ghana, a toddler has captivated the global art scene by setting a new world record. This child prodigy, who is not even 2 years old, has entered the Guinness World Records because of his vibrant paintings. Here's a report on Ghana's young Picasso.
Talent knows no age boundaries. Stories of extraordinary young achievers inspire everyone. Such is the case of a remarkable toddler from Ghana whose incredible artistic abilities have set a new global record. He's not even 2 years old, but already he's taking the art world by storm. Alyson Ankara is the world's youngest male artist. He clinched the title after exhibiting and selling his brightly colored paintings, and his achievement has been confirmed by the Guinness World Records. Alyson will turn 2 years old in July. He made his debut with a masterpiece titled The Crawl. Liam's mother, Chantel Kukua Eghan, discovered his passion for painting when he was just 6 months old. While working on a painting commission from Miss Universe Ghana, Chantel spread out a canvas on the floor for Alyson to explore. To her amazement, he ended up spreading paint across the canvas in the process of crawling, creating his first masterpiece. Alyson resides in the West African country of Ghana. He regularly paints at the Arts and Cocktail Studio founded by his mother, and she gives him complete independence to create whatever he wishes.
Actually, he chooses the colors himself, and these are colors that I try to purchase. If I'm purchasing green, I try to purchase 3 shades of green. And usually when he's making an artwork, he's able to choose colors that complement each other. So I can't really explain his choices in colors. However, that is how he chooses to express himself at the moment, by the colors he chooses.
Ankara held his first exhibition at the Museum of Science and Technology in Accra. He sold 9 out of 10 artworks listed for sale. His painting sessions vary in length. At times it lasts for just 5 minutes, but sometimes they go on for 30 minutes.
He's so excited, especially when he wakes up in the morning and he says, "Mama, painting." He knows that he's coming to the studio, and immediately he enters this space. It's like this jubilation. You can see he's actually happy and ready to paint. He's always excited when it comes to painting.
An artist herself, Chantel enjoys having her son by her side while they paint together, but she's open to whatever path Alyson chooses in the future.
For Alyson's future, I believe that it's only right to push him when it comes to education and possibly selling his works internationally. So right now, my future plans for him is to seek scholarship opportunities where he will be found in an educational space where his art could be nurtured, as well as probably working with international galleries where he could sell his artworks. If he ends up growing up and he chooses another field, that is also good, because I want him to also explore. It could be sciences, it could be music, it could be art.
Ace Liam's story is an example of how passion and talent can flourish at any age. His journey as the world's youngest male artist has not only set a new record, but it also serves as a source of inspiration for the young and old alike. Whether he continues in the arts or ventures into new fields, Ace Liam's early achievements have already left their mark.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.